warm welcome to Tuesday Talks on Art with Abir, where we feature the most compelling voices in contemporary art and design. Today, we have the immense pleasure of speaking with Samit Das, a Delhi based visual arts practitioner whose works excavate memory, space, and material history. From his formative years at Kala Bhavana Shantiniketan to residencies across Paris, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh, Samit has built a remarkable contemporary art practice. Thank you for joining us. Such a
Thank you so
pleasure to
much.
have you. You have said that your art is a dialogue between the self you are and the self you yearn to be, often through imagined architectural landscapes. So, I'm interested in knowing how and when in life did your first sense that the space itself could become an artistic material? When did that idea come to you? Or what was the what was the situation in your life like when you had that idea that space itself is an artistic material for an artist?
See, one need to understand what is the meaning of space. I mean, for me, space is not just a man-made building or man-made architecture, something. It's a whole idea where people can breathe, where a person can breathe, where person can have a dialogue, and that dialogue could be with somebody else's, and the dialogue could happen with the person himself or herself, you know. And self and me, that's a very interesting idea, self and me, because every human being, we have a two layers. One is outside, other one is inside. And many times we don't understand what is exactly happening inside. Sometimes the inside layer is not aware about that outside layer, you know. So that is also a space. And of course, as a visual artist, if you want to define, or if I need to define the space, I have to come through a tools which could explore through the visual language, because it's a visual language. When I'm writing, then it's a language, is with the word and sentence and all. And if it is a visual language, then I have to come up with certain kind of a tools and ideas where people could get through it. I need to invite them. I need to open up the space, open up the door, or I mean, I need to show the staircase, whatever, you know. So that's how I think. And as you ask, when I have started feeling or when I have reacted to that, that perhaps happened when I was shifting from Kolkata to Shantiniketan, because I born and brought up in Jamshedpur, and it's a very interesting industrial city, and of course it's a man-made space. And Calcutta, of course, it has its own colonial history. It has a different, of course, it was a British capital, and I was staying in a hostel, which is a very very congested area. It's in the North Calcutta. Of course, it was a bit of a difficult for me to staying in that space. Of course, it's not a problem with the space means it's not a problem with that colleague or anybody else's, you know. But the whole environment was a bit difficult. I mean, in that age, perhaps I could not digest much of that. And then I thought, okay, let's find out something else. And when I been to Shantiniketan first time, and I realized this is something suits with me. Perhaps I should come and join Kala Bhavana Shantiniketan. Of course, that was very early to say I have realized about the space. No, it was not that. The time come when I was about to start with my dissertation paper. Then I thought, why not? I should look at this architectural space of Shantiniketan. Architecture means not just a six, seven houses or 10 houses, but how this space is creating energy for students, and how Tagore has started this space from the barren land.
Right.
That's how.
Yeah. So, sir, you had mentioned Jamshedpur, where you were born, and
Mm.
I wanted to know about how I wanted to see what it was like growing up in Jamshedpur, which is like an industrial city. And even though you said the sort of change happened during your move to Shantiniketan, but even before that, how did growing up in a space like Jamshedpur sort of contributed to your artistic sensibilities?
So you see, I have grown up in Jamshedpur, and Jamshedpur is a very interesting city where the geometry and organic components is kind of a combined together. You know, it's an industrial city. It has that industrial motif. It has a planned township, that buildings and apartments and all. At the same time, it has got a lot of greeneries.
Yeah.
So till today, even my work, it has a combination of this organic and inorganic, the geometry and organic, you know, the symmetry and asymmetry. That combination is there, and I realize maybe that has started from that place only. And of course, Jamshedpur is a place where, I mean, I used to go to the art class, and where the teacher taught me, okay, you try to create your own vision. I mean, how you look at it, you try to look at the nature, because that's the closest thing, you know. And of course, the another interest I kind of attached to it, that's a technical drawing, because
Right.
those days it was a big blueprint, and I used to make drawings behind of that blueprint sheet, which was rejected from the company. And this blueprint is a kind of inspiration, because they got a lot of these technical drawings and so on, and that still carrying in my artwork, which is another kind of a architectural space, I feel. And from that point, even I started realizing still life is not just a still life, it is a transformation of life. Even when I came to the art college, always there is a terminology called still life, still life. I said, no, it's not a still life, it's a transformation of life, you know. So all these ideas kind of a close to each other, and step by step I started realizing it is not I have realized in one day, or when I was living Jamshedpur, I came to Calcutta, everything was very clear. No, it was not that actually. I mean, days and years after I started realizing, oh, that was the cause, that was the reason, something like that.
And sir, you had mentioned how you started working on your MA thesis and sort of came to know and more deeply about the architecture. And what was the what was the experience of studying in Shantiniketan in your formative years and coming across Tagore's pedagogy, living pedagogy, and how has that sort of your interaction with Tagore and his ideas, how did that change things for you?
See, for me, pedagogy is a very fancy term and widely used. This terminology, pedagogy and pedagogue, in every way people use it. But I believe Tagore never created any pedagogy. It was a whole idea of freedom. You create your own pedagogy, what you think. It is not he has created something and kind of a forcing to adapt that. No, I don't think so. Tagore wanted that even in Vishvarati. Of course, later on, when it became a central university, now it is with the semester system, the 5 year course transformed in a 4 year course. That's a different thing. In my time, at least I got the 5 year degree course and 2 years master degree, and still the different freedom was there because number of students was less. And I mean, my time, the students are more or less actually. Of course, the changes are always there. Everybody will say, oh, my time was different, my time was different, but I think every institution has a good time and everybody has their good time in the institution. So it is not that key I have my best time and nobody has that time. It is not that way. And pedagogy, I think Tagore created certain kind of a dynamic space where everybody can create their own pedagogy. He has not implemented anything, he has not planted anything, he has not forced anything, you know. And that's how the whole Vishwavarati spirit has born together. It was not a one person, it was not a two person or a few person, it is a whole team spirit work together.
And decades later, I'm just curious, how does that sort of idea of freedom shape your artistic practice? Because now you
Well,
have been all over the world and you have seen many things.
you see, coming from Jamshedpur and then 1 year, 1.5 year in Calcutta Government Art College, I mean, Shantiniketan system was a heaven for me. Because in Calcutta Art College it was 10 to 4 like office time classes. It's like office hours. You go there after your food and do your studies, and then by 4:30 you finish your classes and you get out from the college. But in Shantiniketan there is no such thing. Studio is open for 24 hours, at least in my time. So you can work. anytime. And of course, there was a freedom, then one can go to the other department even. And place is so small that you can meet everyone. You can go to any teacher's house, you can ask them, okay, this is what I am doing it, okay, what do you think, conversation, so on. Eh, Even some world famous people, I mean, you get some time to meet them in Shantiniketan. You might not meet them in somewhere else, uh, but you get a time to meet them in Shantiniketan. That was the beauty of that place, actually. That create a lot of energy and helped me. I must say that, and I must acknowledge that.
So, sir, I sort of want to, because we are on the topic of Shantiniketan, I sort of want to want to know more about your book, Architecture of Shantiniketan, Tagore's concept of space. It is, it is the amalgamation of 15 years of research and your work and sort of immersion in the practice itself. So, could you tell us a bit more about your, the book and the the artworks as well?
See, the book is an integral part of my art practice because my practice is something which is, I mean, deeply engaged with the reimagining and reanimating the archive. And of course, it has its own idea to get into the politics of land, archaeology, and architecture. Of course, it is much later came, but not in the student life. The book started as a MA dissertation. That time, the title was Surendranath Kaur and Shantiniketan Architecture, because he was the principal architect or whatever the leading person you can say. But the none of the people they have any architectural training. And for me, the whole idea, not just houses and defining the houses and making some technical drawing and plan of the houses. No, I was looking for what makes that space is special. What was the spirit? What was the idea behind to make these houses? And how they developed it, because there was no money. With the money constraint, how they made it. Some houses it took 6 years, 8 years. And of course, it is creating a enduring energy for people, students, teacher. So how they thought? Of course, there was idea to oppose the British education system, to searching for a new language in art after independence or before just independence. They have started. So Kala Bhavana was not like a full-fledged institute. It was very small, you know, and those days it was not very easy to think about it, because Shantiniketan started as a meditative center in the Shantiniketan houses. Later on, students came, two, three students, they started the school. Then slowly it started growing. And for me, when I joined, it was 89 and I was there until 1996. So the dissertation was a very limited area. It's just a primary step into that reimagining the archive or thinking about a space in a more meticulous way, you know, and how to bring back that whole idea of space into my art practice, because it was not a very easy, because as a student I have done the work, then I left the space, and then I came to Delhi. Of course, it was a big contrast. Jamshedpur, Calcutta, 7 years in Shantiniketan, then in Delhi. It's a big contrast. Of course, Delhi is a huge city. Shantiniketan never questioned perhaps about the identity, who you are. All the time, students, you are with the student's identity. But in Delhi, all the time we need to struggle. What is the identity? Where to find the breathing space? And still, I love Delhi because this has that kind of energy to keep you in a turbulence, and you question yourself constantly and search for identity. That's where the whole idea goes to dialogue between self and me, the idea of space, the architecture you built up. It is not you're making a house, but you're building yourself.
Really like the idea of building yourself, and you were discussing identity, so I have a question connected to that. After such a long decades of consistently engaging with spaces and visual practices all across the world, how do you define yourself? Do you define yourself as an artist or an archivist or visual artist? What is the term you would use to refer to yourself, and why?
See, I should not say I'm an activist, I'm an archivist, I'm just an artist. It's a whole combination of a what you say is a visual interpreter, and visual interpreter need to know the idea of archive, idea of writing, idea of preservation, idea of a material, the history of materiality. So you need all those elements together. Otherwise, you cannot really interpret through the visual, because if word is speaking, then visual has to speak. If word is speaking, visual is not speaking, then it's my failure. It is nobody's problem. And that is where many people say, oh, we don't understand contemporary art. But I think contemporary art is, I should take the responsibility if somebody is not kind of getting into my artwork. Because I'm the interpreter, this is a language. I'm here to communicate with someone through the visual language. Like my book, I have written it and people read it. So people has to read my artwork even. So I should say is an interpreter simply, not going for any complicated like a digital creator or something activist. No, no, like I can't be activist actually. I mean, you see, artists are very, very self-centered, and I think when most of the time we do studio practice, even if we do public art, I mean, hardly people get engaged with it actually. It's very difficult. I mean, many years back, I know some of my teachers, they did public art in a village. It's for the villagers, but they could not get any success outcome from that movement. They have to come back with just artwork, and they have to bring back that artwork without frame even. I'm talking about is something like a, I believe it's mid 80s or early 80s, early 80s. Yeah, before I joined Kala Bhavana, they were my all my teachers. So it was quite fascinating idea they attempted, but they could not succeed it. Even if many public art, it's a very exclusive people. But at the same time, if you look at the Banjara shop, I don't know, the nomadic tribe who comes from Rajasthan or something, they create a kind of a shelter next to the footpath or road or wherever. That create a very, very interesting and vibrant view in the city. One can come up with the argument, okay, they are occupying the footpath, but that's how the India is. The footpath and the street vendor, these are the people, they are creating a character, special character for this city, country. It's a country with order and chaos. The city moves with it, order and chaos, but still it's moving. It's amazing. It's got a very, very vibrant view, and it's very dynamic. And that gives me energy to work.
So, when I was reading up about your work and looking at it, one metaphor, one idea that keeps coming up was the idea of excavation and archaeology, and using archival fragments are core ways of understanding history. So, this this act of excavation, how does that? What does it mean to you? As an artist, how does it become a really integral part of your practice?
See, excavation means it's not just you're digging up that soil, it is just digging up your mind, your brain, you know. So that's the whole idea of excavation, because you're looking back to your memory, you are searching for the past, you are looking what was the detail, what you have lost, what you are carrying forward, what was most memorable, what was most powerful. I mean, that's the whole idea of excavation. The way archaeologists, they dig up the ground, they get thousands and millions of pieces, they create a kind of a sequence, and they later they come up with the whole idea of historiography. Later on, historian or art critic or whoever they come, but that's the first primary source to look at the visual art. Archaeology is something very early, interesting, and earliest example to look at visual art. So excavation means how you are minding your mind and bringing back to your present practice and present expression, because everything has to happen for me at least, because I don't do that mechanized practice. I mean, some edition or something, I don't do that. Is everything with the hands and mind, I mean, I still believe on the nerve psyche. I mean, We all use the AI, but I'm not interested much to use in the visual art because that's the end of the day is algorithm. You are giving the data and the AI is refining it and organizing it and presenting you within a box file or whatever. Even I have checked, and if you go with some rare and odd material like a regional language or some local folk elements and all, sometimes AI give a very wrong information.
True.
So I'm interested how the whole nerve psyche work, and that's how we create a different notion of the art. The oil bar, how the oil bar has developed. It is the whole idea of Van Gogh's psychology of painting because Van Gogh had a short temperament and fast moving the expression and all. So it was very expressive work he has done with the thick pigments and all. So oil bar is something one should not lose the time to mixing and create preparing the color. You just take the bar and do whatever you want in a fast movement with no time. So end of the day, who is the primary source? Van Gogh.
Yeah.
That's his mind.
Sorry. So, coming back to your artistic practice, I'm curious to know how the act of choosing mediums happen for you, because you have had a very variety of explorations and experiments with mediums. Like you have done immersive installations, and you have made books, and then you do a lot of photography by, in terms of archiving. So how do you decide with the medium, and what is your take on medium as a category?
See, it is not a question of a category or it is not my decision. It is always come up as an organic process. It's an organic growth. Okay, this is the thought process moving, and at the same time, medium is also moving with the thought process. It's a flow.
No, do you have any preference for any medium, or it's just what, or
No, it's not my preference. It is always the demand from the concept, the idea. Like I'm a very techie person. I make the small animation. I use a lot of software, but I don't. I mean, I never learned them to repeat anything. If you ask me to do this animation again for me with a different image or something like that, that will come up something different, not the similar one, because I don't know how to do that because I believe the surprise of technology. I love that because these days in the digital media, everything is so well defined, the curiosity is almost getting vanished. So I love the curiosity, I love the surprise actually, you know. And still, that is the reason I like the photogram, the technique, because in a dark room within a chemical tray, the white paper will give you image and you don't know what is the image coming up because photogram you're working with negative and OHP film and other real objects and 4 5 and larger and all, so you don't know what kind of image can appear in front of you. It's a surprise and I enjoy that. Yeah.
so sir, I sort of want to discuss the idea of urbanity in, in your practice. So you are currently living and working in New Delhi, and sort of in the periphery, in the urban periphery in your studio. And how does that sort of change in nature, change in surroundings, what is your take on that? Like how do you see urbanity and the changing urban scape of Delhi?
See, I never against of any urbanity or urbanism because everybody love. I also love the whole idea of urbanism. I love the modern facilities in the city. I never grown up in a village. Village is a kind of a romantic idea for me because I just visited that as a visitor or as an outsider. I never lived in a village. I never born and brought up in a village. So urbanism is, I mean, grown up with me from Jamshedpur onwards, And I love the whole idea because the way people come here, they create their own space. They kind of are trying to move. Somebody they get success, somebody they don't get success. It's a kind of a different mess. It's not a plan. Even if a city like Delhi, you have a very sophisticated area, expensive area, but suddenly in corner you will see some small vegetable vendor, some tea shop, some makeshift shanties and all. It is all there because that is also required for those high class people, perhaps the rich person, because they also need some service provider. So where you get the service provider? These are the people. I mean, I have a whole series of work which is a kind of a shadow. And this shadow created in the middle class houses, because middle class or lower middle class, they are the service provider. They are the one who is holding the city. So I'm not against of any urbanization or anything. It is not. I don't think so. It's a good idea to think about, oh, village this and that. No, no, no. It's not my idea, at least. I'm interested, okay, how cities are growing, how country is growing. I mean, of course, the village people, they should have their own facility. They should be in a different way. They should live their life. I'm not, I mean, I'm not saying, okay, you destroy nature, you destroy the greeneries, you destroy the natural resources and make the cities. No, it is not that. But you see, always there is a problem. If you have a scientific invention, of course, it has its own way positive side, it has a negative side. Every technology, it has a good side, it has a bad side. So you can't ignore that even.
Yeah.
We need to carry forward. Like digital technology, it has its own positive thing, lot of positive thing. At the same time, it's a problem. One need to change their computer or phone every 5 years or 6 years, or maybe before that. It's a recurring expenses. But at the same time, it's a helpful. And I think as an artist or creative person, I always accumulate and I accept that. Otherwise, the civilization, the society cannot move. But yeah, definitely, I'm not interested. I'm against that. Okay, if somebody is destroying the nature, somebody is destroying the natural resources, and by force making some unnecessary building or unnecessary some other resources for any personal benefit, then it's a problem. There are many ways one can do that. Actually,
Yeah.
you know, development should be within a positive way, in a stable way, in a slow and steady process, not just a fast process. It's not a fast food. Modern and modernism, which is, it's not just a doing something boxy painting or some abstraction, this and that. No, no, no. It is not the idea. Modernism means how from inside you are advanced with your mind, how you have refined yourself. That's what even the Bengali school people, the Tagore family from Calcutta, they tried. India, we do have a lot of flows of modernism or modernist approach, but they are the one who expanded like anything. The book cover, performance, I mean, furniture, architecture, education, music, I mean, the alphabets, graphic design, textile, many ways, community art practice, many ways. I mean, I don't think so any other flow of modernist movement from other part of India, they have looked at these varied vista. I don't think so. Of course, one can say it is not successful. It has somehow stopped. Nobody was there to carry forward. That's a different problem. Many people thought it's too much of narrow nationalism. That's another issue. Always there is a debate. There's no end of debate. But attempt was good. There's no doubt about it.
No, I agree. Yeah. So, Sid, in as we move on to discussing a particular work, artworks, I want to look at your show Index of Untold Stories. In that, you reimagined handmade artist books alongside rare art history volumes and dissecting bindings and pages. So, what was that sort of rediscovering or creating new meanings through this archival and cutting these sort of process? What was that like? What was that project like? Would you tell us more about it?
See, the Index of Untold Stories, it was an interesting project. It was an invitation from the India International Center, New Delhi. And there's a whole dialogue between the artist book which I have created, handmade books, and many of the books, special books from my library, like book printed on Japanese collotype printing process, Koka magazine, the first edition books, first edition E.B. Hebel Indian architecture, that sort of stuff. So the whole idea how the past and present are having a dialogue, that is number one. Number two, of course, those books are piece of art. This artist book terminology, it is invented by the Western world. But we do have our own artist book from many years, like Indian miniatures, Jain manuscript, or whatever. Even the Christianity they do have. But it is a whole idea of the terminology. But my thought was that okay, let's bring up all those things together and let's see how it is, how they're creating their own dialogue. Because my book, it has its own archive and own history. Those books has its own archive and own history. There's a huge gap. Sometimes gaps are bigger, sometimes gaps are shorter, but dialogue can continue. And that's how we can create a bridge. Because if you're not connecting with the past, you cannot have a present, you cannot have a future. That's very important point. You can't ignore the past. Of course, one need to choose what kind of past you are looking for me, which has created some positive vibe to go ahead in a different level. I choose that. There's no point to choose any negativity. Yeah.
So in projects like In Search of Frozen Music, which you had done at Nature Mode, you translate the architecture's static weight into buildings, murals, and frozen forms, which like these architectural experience which people can feel bodily. So how do you bridge that gap between the heavy permanence and that sort of sensory immediacy, that sort of dichotomy of permanence and that fragility of your body?
No, this show happened, Index of Untold Stories, this happened in IIC, India International Center, not in
Okay.
Nature.
Okay.
So you see, the people who has not seen those actual book, they will not have any reaction or feeling, okay, how artists could create a book, because those books itself is a language, artistic language. It's a piece of sculpture. The way the binding happened, the embossing happened, cover happened, the printing happened, the tactility of the paper, the stitching, it's all very different art form. And how I'm creating that as a artistic practice, because I've not written those book. It is just a visual book. I'm focusing on just a visual narrative. But those books, whatever came from my library, they got a visual and text both. So my idea is okay without text, because the text was different. It was an old text. It was past, like 100 years old or whatever. But now, how I'm creating my own journey through the visuals, because simply visual has ability to narrate. You don't have to read the language, because sometimes language is a barrier. People say, "Oh, we don't know English, we don't know Telugu, we don't know the Ahamiya or whatever." But visual can speak is a universal language. You know.
So now I sort of want to put light on your the multifaceted life you have lived. Over decades, you have juggled studio work, writing, curation, research, and traveling and involved with other artistic practices all over the world. So how do you structure the time and energy to sustain all these threads? And what is how is what is the role discipline plays in this sort of achievements?
I don't think so. I have achieved anything. There is no discipline. It goes with a very organic way. Like when I was doing that book, Architecture of Shantiniketan, of course, it was a need to do that because I thought, no, this is something which is not just architecture, but it is all about a philosophy of an education institution. So I should bring out that because from mid 90s mostly the whole articulation of Indian art which is focusing or seeing through the westerners lens, but I thought, don't we have our own background and don't we have own writings or something happened the art movement? So let's look at that. So in that way I have started looking at that work. I'm not against to go back to the Westerners or some looking through the Westerner lenses, but I think one should have the combination of that whole thing because something they might be very successful, but something we might be successful. So we need to understand what we want, you know. And like dust, dust is something we can't ignore. So how to take the dust? How to use it even in art form somewhere, mud or something? There are many elements like that, you know. So the later on, I did a book on political cartoons from Bengal. So now I'm working bit of a pan-Asian idea of the political cartoon. It is not a graphic novel. It is not a comics. It's just a specific and focused on the political cartoon. Then I thought we artists or art historian, we talk about freedom, deconstruction, so on, many things, social responsibility, but we never looked at the cartoonist work, the cartoonist ideas and thought process. Hardly any museum or any galleries we have included the cartoon. Of course, there is no original cartoon much available because they are in a bad shape. They didn't have a good financial condition even. Only we can see some of the Gaganendranath Tagore's because it was a litho print and it has its own market value as a Tagore something. But rest, it is nowhere. So I written that book, and thankfully one publisher from Calcutta, they came forward, they saw the IIC show and they came forward and they published the book last year because it is not to hurt anyone, but the political cartoon is very very important and interesting form of art
So
because
what
I
is
sorry.
no? I was asking ki, what has happened to political cartooning in India now? Like, what is the situation? What do you think?
I
Because
think it's not institution wise, it's not happening much with the newspaper and magazine. It's very less. But I know many independent person, individually, people are working. Yes, it is very much there. The self publishing, the online publishing, it is all there because it's interesting medium, and of course there are many ways one need to express themselves. So cartoonist mind is made with a very different thing. We don't have that research system because I spoke to many cartoonists. They say, oh, we love, we enjoy and that, but uh, in abroad in Europe and all, they have studied the brain of cartoonists. It has a different component at some point. That's why, because I will never make cartoon. I will never make cartoon. I never made either. But some people, they just make it. So of course there are some composition within the brain according to science. They get into that cartoon.
sir, I just have a question. Ki, after doing so many things, and after quite a some time in the Indian art world, are you would you consider giving some advice for the young practitioners, for the young artists, or is it even possible to give advice?
No, I don't want to give any advice. Even if I go for any lecture or any talk, always is a conversation because I learned a lot from the younger generation. Because I always feel the young mind, they are very, very advanced than me. So, and always there is something to learn because when I see the known and unknown graph, so unknown graph is too high, the known graph is just little bit pinch. So I'm afraid to give any advice. It's not the way to begin with. No. I mean, rather, I would prefer conversation and listening and learning because I am a lifetime learner. All the time, I'm interested to learn. Yeah.
So, throughout the conversation, something I was noticing was the sort of clarity you have regarding your artistic philosophy. So, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share it with us. Is there something else you want to talk about, something I have missed? Then we can add that as well. Would you like
No,
to?
generally, these are the things actually because you see, it's a whole journey last 30 years or 35 years, and day by day, you realize something and you get into that, you get clarity in a different level. That's the whole idea of excavation, that's the whole idea of a land, because the architecture of silence means the landscape is a silent architecture which absorbs many things. Landscape is not just a beautiful view, it has absorbed the violence and some fighting, some beautiful things, some music. There are many things land absorbed. Of course, the archaeology, which comes as a very, very interesting idea to create the historiography, and archaeology is also dissolved the human ego. And architecture, of course, is a symbol of a civilization, and of course, it's a power of the politics. So these three elements, I'm very intrigued and I'm interested because it has a complex relation. And visual art, it can just explore this endlessly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us today for Tuesday Talk, Samit sir. Such a pleasure. Thank you, Samit sir, for this rich and inspiring conversation. It's been such a true privilege. Looking forward to speaking to you soon. And thank you, viewers, for joining Tuesday Talks. Subscribe for more and see you next week.